1944. The Pacific burns. The sky above the Solomon Islands shimmers with heat and gunfire, a vast blue killing field where identity blurs into smoke. Two brothers born beneath the same roof, raised on the same stories, baptized in the same river, now fly beneath different flags. One, a US Navy fighter pilot, hunts for enemy aircraft tearing through Allied lines. The other, missing in action months before, has been forced to fly under the rising sun. His P-40 captured, repainted, and flown in deception. Neither knows the other is there. As tracer rounds arc through the clouds and engines scream across the horizon, fate loads the gun neither man can see. And somewhere between duty and destiny, a single burst of fire will shatter a family forever. Two brothers took off into the same sky. Only one knew the other was on the opposite side. By 1944, the Pacific had become a vast and merciless arena. Island chains scattered like bones across a sapphire sea, each one soaked in blood. Air combat ruled these waters. Fighters and bombers filled the sky from dawn to dusk, weaving a ceaseless ballet of contrails and death. The Allies had clawed their way northward from Guadalcanal, island by island, base by base, fighting an enemy that would rather die than surrender. But with each victory came confusion, skies packed with dozens of aircraft, radios jammed, identification near impossible. Into this chaos flew Lieutenant Jack Sullivan of the US Navy, 23 years old, all swagger and precision, the kind of pilot who believed the war could be won by sheer will. He flew a Grumman F-6F Hellcat, the pride of the Pacific Fleet, painted with his squadron's shark-tooth grin. To him, the air war was personal. His younger brother, Tom, a transport pilot, had vanished months earlier after his C-47 went down near the Philippines. Officially, Tom was missing in action. Jack carried that absence like an old wound. But the Japanese were clever. They salvaged crashed Allied planes, rebuilt them, and flew them as decoys to lure fighters into traps, to slip through radar unseen. Pilots called them Frankenplanes. Some were flown by Japanese aces, others by coerced prisoners who'd been forced to fly for the enemy. On one sweltering morning over the Solomon Islands, two fighters would meet in that cruel masquerade of war, one painted in false colors, the other hunting shadows. Neither pilot would know the truth until the smoke cleared. Lieutenant Jack Sullivan's squadron was flying out of Bougainville, a newly captured Allied airfield carved from jungle mud and sweat. Each dawn began the same, engines coughing to life under a blood-orange sky, mechanics shouting over propellers, and pilots scribbling final letters home before strapping into their machines. That morning, orders came through. Intercept a small formation of enemy aircraft reported over the Solomon Sea, fast, low, and headed straight for an Allied convoy. Nothing unusual. Jack led the second element, his Hellcat bristling with 50 caliber guns, his heart steady as the hum of his engine. But this mission would not be ordinary. Hundreds of miles away, in a secret Japanese base on New Britain, another pilot was being prepared for flight, Captain Tom Sullivan. Captured months earlier after a forced landing, Tom had endured the unthinkable: interrogation, isolation, and a choice between death or obedience. The Japanese, fascinated by his flying skill, offered him a role, fly a captured P-40 for demonstration and reconnaissance. Refuse and be executed. He told himself he would never fight. He would fly only under guard, never engage, never harm. But war erases intention. That day, Tom's orders were simple. Fly a reconnaissance loop over the Solomon Sea in an old Allied fighter freshly painted with red Hinamaru circles. His escorts, Japanese Zeros, would handle protection. He just had to fly, report, and return. Tom didn't know Allied fighters were already in the air. He didn't know his brother was among them. And Jack, roaring north at 10,000 feet, didn't know the enemy P-40 on his radar blip had once shared his family's barn, his laughter, his blood. Through cloud banks and radio static, destiny began its slow, deliberate descent. The Solomon sky was dazzling that morning, too bright, too clean, the kind of cruel beauty that mocked what men were about to do in it. Jack's Hellcat formation cut through the clouds in tight V formation, sunlight flashing off their wings like shards of glass. Over the radio, chatter crackled, bandits at 2 o'clock low. And in seconds, the stillness shattered. Below them, 3 enemy fighters appeared, tiny black specks dancing above the sea. 2 were unmistakably Japanese Zeros, agile and sharp as razors. But the third was wrong. Its silhouette was heavier, familiar. A P-40 Warhawk, an American plane, but painted in the enemy's red circles. Command, confirm, 1 bogey appears to be flying Allied hardware. Copy that, Red 2. Engage all hostiles. Jack hesitated. His instincts screamed that something wasn't right. He'd seen captured aircraft before, but never in combat like this. Still, training overruled doubt. He rolled into a dive, his Hellcat shrieking as it tore downward through sunlight and flak bursts. Tom saw them coming. The silver glint of US fighters above, the ones he used to fly with. His heart pounded. He banked hard, radioing in English, "Don't shoot, I'm..." But his transmission drowned in static. The Zeros beside him peeled away like falcons, drawing fire and fury. Tracer fire stitched the sky. The sea below erupted with white plumes as bullets struck the waves. Jack lined up the P-40 in his gun sight. The shape of it tugged at something deep in him, a shadow of recognition. But in air combat, hesitation meant death. He squeezed the trigger. The Hellcat's guns roared, spewing streams of orange fire. The rounds struck the P-40's fuselage, tearing through metal, trailing smoke. Tom's cockpit filled with heat and noise. His hands burned on the controls as he tried to pull up, the plane shuddering violently. Through the chaos, he glimpsed the insignia on his attacker, a white star on blue. American. In that split second, his eyes widened with terrible understanding. He tried again to call out, voice breaking over the radio. "Jack, it's..." Static. Only static. The P-40 rolled once, trailing smoke like a wound in the sky. It plunged toward the sea, a solitary flame against endless blue. Jack circled above, watching the wreckage burn on the waves, chest heaving, trying to ignore the strange, suffocating weight in his gut. His wingman's voice came over the radio. "Nice shot, Red 2. You got the lead." But Jack didn't answer. He was staring at the falling smoke, his finger frozen on the trigger, as if he could still feel the heartbeat of the man inside that plane. The sea was calm when the flames finally died. A single slick of oil spread slowly across the water, rainbow colors shimmering against the sun, the kind of beauty that only death can paint. Jack circled the wreckage once more, searching for movement, for a parachute, for anything human among the waves. But there was nothing. He radioed in the kill confirmation, voice steady, but his hands trembled on the stick. 1 enemy down. Returning to base. It was just another line in another report, another victory in a sky that had swallowed thousands. But back at Bougainville, as dusk fell and the jungle sang its indifferent song, a clerk handed Jack a coded message. He tore it open with the restless impatience of habit, and then froze. It was a debrief from intelligence. The Japanese had been using captured Allied aircraft for weeks, and according to intercepted reports, one was flown by an American prisoner identified as Captain Thomas Sullivan. The paper slipped from Jack's hand. The world tilted. The whine of distant engines, the laughter in the mess hall, even the rain outside, all of it receded into nothing. He walked out of the tent without a word, past his squadron mates and their congratulations, past the glowing lanterns and the smell of oil and sweat, until he reached the edge of the airstrip. Out there under the Pacific stars, his Hellcat waited, its metal skin still warm, its guns still reeking of cordite. He touched the nose of the aircraft with the same hand that had pulled the trigger. The paint felt cold. No tears came, just silence. The kind of silence that only war understands. For the rest of his life, he would remember that day in fragments. The glint of sunlight on the P-40's wings, the flicker of recognition too late to matter, and the way the sea had swallowed it all without judgment. He had killed the enemy. He had done his duty. And in doing so, he had destroyed the last piece of his own humanity. The war would roll on, indifferent to heartbreak. The Pacific campaign swallowed lives by the thousands, names turned into numbers, grief into paperwork. Jack Sullivan kept flying. Promotions came, medals followed, and each citation praised his courage under fire. None mentioned the name that lived behind his eyes. He never told anyone. Not the Navy, not his crew, not the families back home who wrote cheerful letters about victory and justice. But every time he climbed into a cockpit, the sound of the engine brought back the echo of that single burst of gunfire, the one that had severed the thread between brothers. In truth, the tragedy of the Sullivans was not unique. Across the Pacific, friendly fire incidents and mistaken identities scarred the war's memory. Pilots were blinded by sun glare, by faulty radios, by orders shouted through chaos. Men shot at shadows, and sometimes those shadows wore the faces they loved. The Pacific sky was a deceiver. Its beauty masked confusion, its light distorted color. A plane's insignia could vanish in the shimmer of heat, and in a heartbeat, duty would eclipse mercy. That was the true cruelty of modern war, the way technology made killing faster than thought, faster than recognition. After the war, when peace returned and the world celebrated its victory parades, veterans like Jack found no comfort in banners or medals. The newspapers told stories of triumph, not of impossible choices. The pilots who'd survived carried their own ghosts, men they'd never meant to kill, voices lost in static. For Jack, the sky became a kind of penance. He'd look up at the streak of a contrail or the sunlight catching an aircraft's wing and think of Tom, his brother, his mirror, still out there, flying alone above the endless blue. History remembers the wars, not the whispers that followed them. The textbooks say who won, who surrendered, who signed the papers, but not who sat alone, staring at an empty chair across the table. Jack Sullivan never sought redemption, because in truth, there was none to find. What he carried was something quieter, the knowledge that in war, right and wrong are often tangled in the same smoke. He'd done his duty, followed orders, defended his comrades, and yet somewhere in the Pacific, duty had turned its barrel toward blood. Years later, when the jet age dawned and propellers faded into memory, he was an old man sitting beneath a still sky. The world had moved on, new wars, new names, new heroes. But whenever he heard the faint growl of an engine overhead, he'd look up. Sometimes, just for a heartbeat, he thought he saw his brother's plane, small, silver and serene, drifting through the clouds like a spirit set free. War has many victories. None are clean. Behind every medal, a wound. Behind every legend, a silence. And perhaps that is the true lesson of the Sullivans, that the greatest tragedies of war aren't written in strategy or glory, but in the spaces between brothers, where love and duty collide in the blinding light of the same sky.